can't account for what's gonna happen next in life. You can be atop of the world 1 minute and celebrating your victories before finding yourself in a bizarre situation you weren't expecting. For example, fate doesn't care that you're the champ. It has other plans. Within wrestling, that always creates quite a stir, much as it did in September 2019 when Chris Jericho's newly won AEW belt was stolen and apparently thrown onto the side of the road. Doesn't really seem like it was his fault, but still, the sheer unbelievable nature of it sparked an online riot. It was memed for days, and as we now know, he must have done it for the bubbly. He's not alone though, as you're about to see. I'm Simon from What Culture, and this is 7 new wrestling champions who immediately did something stupid. Number 7, Ricky Steamboat. Another one where the term stupid seems unfair. In any other walk of life, asking for some time off after a huge sporting win would be fine. You've trained, worked your ass off, and now you just want to have some downtime. Ricky Steamboat did this, however he must have forgotten he was a wrestler in 1987 where that just didn't happen. During the fallout of his WrestleMania 3 win against the Macho Man Randy Savage with a new Intercontinental title around his waist, Steamboat asked for a few weeks rest in order to be with his wife Bonnie as she was about to give birth to her first child. That all seems nice and fair if you ask me. It's not like this was met with rage by management, but Ricky did lose the title very quickly to the Honky Tonk Man, and when he returned from his break, he was given no fanfare at all. It was like WWE had given up on him. You've got to respect Steamboat for doing what he needed and wanted to do, but at the same time, it was always going to go this way. Wrestling is just weird. Thank goodness it's much better now. Number 6, Shawn Michaels. If you don't know the story between Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart, you're either brand new to wrestling or have been living under a rock. It's entrenched in the lore of WWE and is still fascinating simply because it would never happen today. Create too much of a stir. Personal jabs, refusing to lose to each other, backstage fights. Their relationship away from the ring was more interesting than what was going on inside of it. It was the timing of the latter that stands out when it comes to this list though. Going down after Shawn had insinuated that Bret was having an affair with then WWE valet Sonny, the two threw fists at each other as well as removed chunks of hair as the situation escalated. Back in the world of the story, Michaels had just won the tag titles with Stone Cold Steve Austin, and this now became a problem. For his role in the brawl, Shawn was suspended, and that meant this title reign was cut short. Bet Austin loved that. An innocent pawn in a game that had gotten well out of control to the point it was affecting the narrative itself. We all know how this ended, but there were still plenty of other casualties throughout as WWE tried to calm it all down. It didn't work, we then got to Survivor Series, and the rest is history. Number 5, Rob Van Dam. 5 years after coming into the WWE and being the diamond of the alliance during the invasion angle, Rob Van Dam was finally given the due many thought he should have had years prior. It was 2001 when he made his debut, and yet it wasn't until 2006 when he cashed in his Money in the Bank on John Cena at One Night Stand and became WWE Champion. It was even better as he won it in front of a biased crowd who also thought John Cena was their enemy, and credit to John as well, he played his role perfectly. Everything was just lovely. Unfortunately, this wasn't going to last very long. Just 3 weeks after this, Van Dam, along with Sabu, was pulled over by police who suspected something was going on in their car. They weren't entirely wrong. Within the vehicle, cops found 5 Vicodin tablets and other drug paraphernalia, which was not exactly okay. The pair posted bail and were told they had to be in court in 2 months' time. Sadly for RVD, that wasn't the only thing he had to worry about, because before the week was even done, WWE had stripped him of the World Heavyweight title as a lesson in what not to do when you win the top championship in the company. He would never get to this position again. Well, hot damn. Number 4, Mabel. The King of the Ring isn't an actual championship, but no one told that to Mabel, who after winning the tournament in 1995 went and got a title fashioned anyway. Why the hell not? The idea of his win was to make him a credible threat to Kevin Nash, who was then the champion and needed an opponent for SummerSlam. And hey! Defeating huge men worked for Hulk Hogan in the 80s, why couldn't it work for Diesel, who desperately needed something as his run with the title failed to set things on fire? This was all on the cards as well before Mabel sat on his rival during the build and injured him. We probably could have gotten away with one of these, but it had become a trend that management were not happy with. In short, the man on a mission star had hurt too many of WWE's top stars. Vince McMahon was ready to sever this push straight away until Nash himself stepped in and asked for plans to continue. With enough sway, that's what happened, but the writing was on the wall. In short, you need to protect your opponent in wrestling, because if you don't, bad things can happen. And going back to entry number 5, that being Rob Van Dam, there's also rumors the reason it took him so long is because he too kept injuring opponents. Take that for what you will. Number 3, Chris Jericho. We discussed this in the intro, but let's archive it for future generations that may find this list and want more information about what happened to the AEW title mid-days after being put on Chris Jericho's shoulders at All Out. Happening when Y2J was celebrating his win at a steakhouse, somebody found the limo he had traveled in as well as his All Elite Wrestling belt and decided they would just take it. That's how the world works, apparently. Once Jericho was done eating and drinking, he returned to his vehicle to discover this, and what followed was an epidemic throughout the wrestling world, as no one could quite believe what had happened. It was so ridiculous, many thought it was part of a storyline. It wasn't, but that didn't stop Jericho from using all of his experience to turn it into a narrative, as he promised to get his pride and joy back and beat whoever took it up. Thankfully, it only took Tallahassee police 24 hours to recover it, but it was too late by then. We'd all laughed our asses off at the situation to the point it will forever now be entrenched in our heads. So weird, and who's getting a bit tired of those jubbly memes? Number 2, Finn Bálor. Not stupid to you and I, but a situation that would have been seen as stupid to old school wrestlers who ignored injuries as if they weren't real. Mere moments after winning the Universal title at SummerSlam 2016, Finn Bálor knew something was wrong, and he was very right. He had essentially seen his shoulder explode mid-match as he had torn his labrum, an injury that would keep him out the ring for 4 months. It also meant he had to give up his newly won gold just 24 hours later. It really was quite sad. Back in the day, however, this never would have happened. If you had just won the top prize in the game, you would do everything to keep it quiet, because being in that position meant more money and more power, the goal of most wrestlers. Thankfully, we've moved on from them, and never should we return. What's more important than somebody's health? But that's how things worked. You tell me. Unfortunately, too, the reasons for this were clear to see. After he did return, Bálor wasn't even allowed a sniff at the title he lost, probably because he was now seen as an injury risk. That never would have happened had he not said anything, but let's face it, Finn's arm could have fallen off in that scenario, which is far worse than not having a belt adorned over your shoulder. Still though, sucks. When we do look at the situation in September 2019, and yes, that's when I am saying these words, Finn Bálor has taken an extended vacation or a sabbatical, I would guess, because he doesn't really need to worry about his spot. Can that be tied back to the time when he won the Universal Championship and then swiftly lost it? I would say it certainly can. And the less said about his alter ego, the Demon, the better. If you watch it down in NXT, you're probably quite frequented with it, but if you only know it from the main roster, it's a bit like a cousin you only see at Christmas. Maybe they'll turn up, but maybe they can't be asked. Number 1, John Morrison. The signature pharmacy scandal in 2007 wiped through the WWE like a disease. If you were of a certain status, you were going to style it out, but those more on the cusp were in trouble. It affected Ken Kennedy's push something fierce, as it did John Morrison, who had recently left behind M&M to try his luck as a singles competitor. Just a month prior to this, Morrison had won the ECW title as a way to see how he'd handle a situation like this. As soon as the news broke though, John was losing said belt to CM Punk, the man he had beaten the belt for in the first place. He was then slapped with a 30-day suspension. Morrison was of course part of a larger fallout, but suffered more because he was in a good position before it broke. If he had been in the main event for more than a minute, he may have been okay, but unlike a Randy Orton, John didn't carry much political sway, so suffered even more. Such is the way of professional wrestling and WWE, and don't you ever forget it. Life isn't fair, but nobody ever said it would be. It's a shame, because Morrison had plenty of potential that was untapped by WWE, a point he proved when he left the company and went and smashed it in promotions across the world. There are still rumors today that maybe one day he will return to Vince McMahon's outfit, with the real question being, what will his last name be? I mean, seriously, who has changed their last name more than John Morrison? At one point, I guess he'll just become Johnny SmackDown, and we can draw a line under the whole thing. Know of any other wrestling champions who immediately did something stupid? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Then head over to WhatCulture.com and read yourself some articles, and follow WhatCulture on Twitter at WhatCultureWWE. And hey, you're already here on YouTube, why not watch more videos on What Culture Wrestling? My name is Simon from What Culture. Thank you very much for listening. Apologies for my voice. I'm sure it will come back one day and then we can party in the field like lovers, but I will talk to you again soon.